of the hardest parts about blogging I found has just personally been, you know, writing your content, publishing your post, and then waiting and having that delay between getting the results on the back of that blog post. For example, if you hit the publish button on your blog post today, it could take 6 months to 1 year before that blog post starts to bring in any real significant amount of traffic there. As such, it's only natural that this puts a lot of people off the world of blogging. And so are there any factors, are there any indicators that your blog might take off sooner rather than later? In the video today then guys, I'm going to break down my top 4 signs to determine if your website, if your niche site, if your blog, whatever you want to call it, is or isn't going to take off. So let's jump into it. You've published over 100 posts. So easily one of the most frustrating parts about blogging is that we don't physically control the sheer number of page views our blogs will earn every single month. Heck, we can't even really predict the number of page views that the keywords that we're going after will generate every single month, with tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush both being very, very inconsistent and inaccurate. As such, we have to control the controllables, and one of the biggest levers that we have to push on is the sheer number of blog posts that you have on your website. I haven't had a lot of success in blogging, but also, let's be honest, a hell of a lot more failure. One of the big things that I found that allowed me to be a little bit successful in the world of blogging here has simply been getting 100 posts on my website within the first 3 to 6 months or so. This basically front loads your website and shows to Google that you are an authority, that you are consistent at blogging. And it just means that Google's much more likely to want to trust you with content and just basically allowing your post to appear in the search. Also, from a pure numbers point of view, this will allow you to get a lot more content out there, allow you to understand, you know, what posts are working, what type of posts are working, and which ones aren't, and really allow you to hone in on those particular posts there as well. You have surprisingly beaten your competitors. So another major sign, and something that I've discovered this year actually, that your blog will indeed take off, is if you're beating some of the larger competitors within your particular niche. Now, this will take a little bit of time to figure out as you try to determine, you know, which blog posts you should write, which blog posts you should avoid, all those kinds of things. For example, if your blog was all around, I don't know, home entertainment, home theaters, for example, and the keyword that you were going after was how many cables do you need for a home theater setup, which shows how much I know about home theaters, right? Let's just say, for example, you typed that into Google and the #1 search result was from a massive brand like Sony, and their blog post definitely answered the question. You wouldn't write that post, right? As you're just not going to be able to compete. However, there is a tiny caveat to that one. Using the same example of how much cable do you need for a home theater setup. If the #1 search result was still Sony, but their blog post didn't answer the question at all, it wasn't very detailed, any of those kinds of things, now I might actually write that blog post. Reason, well, I've actually won the #1 spot for a lot of blog posts on topics that my competitors and much more authoritative competitors were previously ranking in that #1 position, simply by going into a lot more detail on those blog posts, actually directly answering the question, and probably most importantly, understanding the user's intent there. Now again, I wouldn't do that for every single blog post out there, but the odd one here and there is definitely worth a try. And if you find that you are beating a lot of your more authoritative competitors within that first page on Google, maybe you're ranking top for a lot of these search terms, then that also is a really, really good sign that you might have a winning blog on your site. Cover multiple topics in detail. Now, another really good sign that your blog post will take off within the next 12 months or so is just ensuring that you're covering a wide variety of content on your website in quite a fair bit of detail there. I'm definitely not saying write 100 blog posts with 100 different topics. So for example, maybe you're starting a general sports website and each of those 100 blog posts are on 100 different sports. That's not going to really help build any authority in the eyes of Google. Maybe hone in on one of those sports just to start off with, so maybe golf, and then under the sub niche of golf, maybe go into a little bit more detail on some of those topics. So writing 25 posts on golf clubs, 25 posts on golf courses, 25 posts on golf techniques. That should hopefully help to set you up with a nice solid base of authority in the eyes of Google. Later on down the line, you can most definitely expand the amount of content on your website. So once you cover the 25 post silos in as many different categories as possible for golf, then move on to rugby, then move on to football, then move on to cricket. But start with that one particular niche and go as deep as possible in all those other subcategories there. Now, this is actually a mistake I made with my first website. I went way too broad, way too quickly. I think I covered off 50 or 60 different topics without actually sticking to just the one. And yeah, As you guys can tell by the analytics, that site isn't really doing well at all. Finally, and I'm sure a lot of you probably aren't going to want to hear this, but the last major indicator of whether your blog is going to be successful or isn't going to be successful is just time. It's always super to remember that even though a lot of us are blogging on the side, this is a side hustle for most of us, it is still a business and we need to treat it as such. And because of that, unfortunately, you have to spend a lot of time before you really determine if something is going to be successful or unsuccessful there. A good timeline or time scale to aim for then would be, if you're not in the seasonal niche, which definitely skews the numbers there. But if it's a normal, general, everyday blog, it's been around about a year and a half, you've got 200 or so posts on your website and it just isn't growing, isn't generating any traffic, then that's a sign that something has potentially gone quite wrong with your website there. If this is the case, then it's likely not a content issue, it's more likely a search analysis, keyword research issue, whereby you've written blog posts that might be very well written, they're not relevant in terms of the topics that they're going after, or the topics you're going after are just far too competitive, and so you probably need to reassess, take a step back, that'll strip your content to see where you can improve and just basically dive into a little bit more detail and see if there may be any other avenues that you want to explore within the world of blogging. After a year and a half then, you should have a pretty good indicator of how your website is going to be getting on. And one of the things I will say is that while it might be super frustrating, you know, growing a blog, spending the time, spending a year to 2 years on a project for it not to take off, only real way you'll end up losing in the world of blogging essentially is just by giving up. So just keep that in mind. So there you have it, blogging family. Those are some of the best indicators I can think of to determine if your blog is going to take off, if it's going to fall down in flames, all those different kinds of things. As always, however, if you are interested in more videos around, you know, your blogging, side hustles, personal development, sales, any of those different kinds of elements, blogging of course there as well, absolutely smash the like and subscribe button, as they both really do genuinely help out the channel. And until the next one, I'll leave you to it again. All the best for now. Have a good one. Bye.